The saw blade screamed through the air. 12-year-old Johnny Cash heard his brother's cry from 100 yards away. By the time he reached the barn, Jack was lying in a pool of blood, nearly cut in half. What their father said in the hospital 3 days later would haunt Johnny for the rest of his life. It was May 12th, 1944, a Saturday morning in Dyess, Arkansas. The Cash family was dirt poor, surviving on a small government settlement farm during the tail end of the Great Depression. Every member of the family had to work, even the children. 14-year-old Jack Cash was the golden boy of the family. Smart, kind, faithful. Everyone in Dyess Colony said Jack would grow up to be a preacher. He had that quality about him, a light that made people believe God had special plans for him. His younger brother Johnny was different, quieter, more troubled, always getting into minor scrapes. If Jack was the son who would make his parents proud, Johnny was the one who'd probably just get by. Their father, Ray Cash, made the difference clear. Often. "Jack's going to be somebody," Ray would say, usually within Johnny's earshot. "That boy's got a calling from God." And Johnny? Ray rarely talked about Johnny's future. That Saturday morning started like any other. The high school was offering $3 to anyone willing to help cut fence posts. $3 was a fortune to the Cash family. 14-year-old Jack volunteered. He'd work the table saw at the agriculture building. That morning, Jack prepared to leave for work. His mother, Carrie, had a bad feeling. "Jack, don't go today," she said, her voice tight with worry she couldn't explain. "Something doesn't feel right." "Mama, we need the money," Jack said gently. "I'll be fine." 12-year-old Johnny was supposed to go fishing that morning with Jack. They'd planned it all week. But at the last minute, Johnny changed his mind. "I'm going fishing with my friends instead," Johnny told Jack. Jack looked disappointed, but didn't argue. "All right, brother. Be safe." Those were the last normal words they'd ever exchange. Around 10:30 that morning, Johnny was fishing when he heard someone running toward them through the woods. "Johnny! Johnny Cash! Come quick! It's your brother Jack. There's been an accident." Johnny ran faster than he'd ever run in his life, through the woods, down the dirt road, toward the high school where a crowd had gathered. He pushed through the people and saw his brother. Jack was lying on the ground, barely conscious. His midsection was torn open. The table saw had malfunctioned, or Jack had slipped. But the spinning blade had caught him across the stomach and chest. The cut was deep, horrifically deep. Blood was everywhere. "Jack!" Johnny screamed. "Jack, hold on!" Jack's eyes opened, focused on his younger brother, and somehow, impossibly, he smiled. "It's okay, Johnny," Jack whispered. "Don't be afraid." Then Jack started talking about angels, about heaven, about seeing something beautiful waiting for him. "Can you see it, Johnny?" Jack asked. "It's so beautiful." The ambulance arrived, took Jack to the hospital. The Cash family followed, all of them packed into the truck, praying desperately that Jack would survive. He didn't die immediately. Jack held on for 3 days. 3 agonizing days where the whole family sat in the hospital, watching the golden boy slowly slip away. During those 3 days, Jack talked constantly about heaven, about angels coming to take him home. He wasn't afraid. "I'm going to a better place," Jack told his mother. "Don't cry for me, Mama. I'm going home." But Johnny couldn't accept it. His older brother was dying, and Johnny felt a guilt so crushing he could barely breathe. If he'd gone fishing with Jack that morning like they'd planned, maybe Jack wouldn't have been alone at the saw. Maybe Johnny would have noticed something wrong. Maybe he could have prevented it. Maybe Jack would still be alive if Johnny had just kept his promise. On the 3rd day, May 15th, 1944, Jack Cash died. He was 14 years old. The family was devastated. The whole community mourned. And then Ray Cash, Johnny's father, said the words that would poison Johnny's soul for the next 50 years. The family was standing in the hospital hallway. Jack's body had just been taken away. Everyone was crying. Ray Cash looked at 12-year-old Johnny, looked at him with eyes full of pain and anger. "It should have been you," Ray said. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Johnny stared at his father, unable to breathe. "What?" Johnny whispered. "It should have been you," Ray repeated, louder this time. "Jack was the good one. Jack had a future. You're just... you. Why couldn't it have been you instead?" The other family members gasped. Johnny's mother reached for Ray, but he pulled away. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Ray said. "We lost the wrong son." Johnny felt something inside him shatter, something that would never fully heal. His own father had just told 12-year-old Johnny Cash that he wished Johnny had died instead of Jack, that he had no value, no worth, no reason to exist. The funeral was 3 days later. They buried Jack Cash in a small cemetery outside Dyess. Johnny stood at the grave, numb, empty, his father's words echoing in his head. "It should have been you." After the funeral, nothing was normal anymore. The Cash family fell into a depression. Carrie stopped singing hymns. Ray worked the fields in angry silence. And Johnny became quieter, more withdrawn. He felt like a mistake, an error, the wrong brother who'd survived. At home, Ray's resentment grew stronger. He never apologized for what he'd said in the hospital, never took it back. When Johnny made a mistake on the farm, Jack wouldn't have messed that up. When Johnny got in trouble at school, Jack never gave us this kind of problem. When Johnny showed interest in music, Jack was going to be a preacher, and you want to sing songs. The message was clear, constant, devastating. You are not enough. You will never be enough. The wrong son survived. Johnny started having nightmares, dreams where he was back at the barn, watching the saw cut into Jack. But in the dreams, he could save his brother. He'd wake up screaming, feeling the weight of failure crushing his chest. Guilt became Johnny's constant companion. Survivor's guilt mixed with his father's rejection created a toxic poison that infected everything. If I'd gone fishing with Jack that day, if I'd been at the saw instead of him, if I'd been the one who died, music became his only escape. When Johnny sang, he could forget for a few minutes that he was the wrong son. Gospel songs especially moved him, hymns about redemption, about God's grace, about sinners finding forgiveness, because that's what Johnny felt like, a sinner, guilty of the crime of surviving when the good brother died. At 16, Johnny left Dyess, joined the Air Force, got as far away from his father and that farm as he could. But distance didn't help. The guilt followed him everywhere. Years later, Johnny Cash would become famous, stand on the biggest stages in the world, sell millions of records, become a legend. But inside, he was still that 12-year-old boy hearing his father say, "It should have been you." That's why the pills started. In the 1960s, when success should have made him happy, Johnny Cash was drowning in amphetamines and alcohol, trying to numb the voice in his head that said he didn't deserve to be alive. That's why he crawled into Nickajack Cave in 1967, ready to die, because part of him believed his father was right. The wrong son had survived. That's why he destroyed the Grand Ole Opry stage in 1965. Self-destructive behavior fueled by a deep belief that he deserved to fail. Every terrible decision Johnny Cash made traced back to May 15th, 1944. To the day Jack died. To the words his father spoke. It should have been you. But here's what nobody expected. Here's the lesson that took Johnny 50 years to learn. In 1991, Johnny Cash was asked in an interview about his brother Jack, about the guilt he'd carried all his life. By then, Ray Cash was dead. Johnny was an old man now, weathered, broken by years of addiction, but clearer than he'd been in decades. "I spent my whole life thinking I should have died instead of Jack," Johnny said quietly. "My father told me that, made me believe it, and I carried that guilt like a stone in my chest for 50 years. He paused, wiped his eyes. "But I was wrong," Johnny continued, "and my father was wrong. Jack wouldn't have wanted me to live like that. Jack loved me. He was at peace. He was okay." Johnny looked directly at the camera. "The guilt I carried wasn't Jack's gift to me. It was my father's curse, and it almost destroyed me. But here's what I finally learned. You can't live your life trying to die for someone else's sins. You can't punish yourself for surviving." He smiled sadly. "Jack died. I lived. That's not fair. It's not right. But it's what happened. And I had a choice. I could spend my life feeling guilty for surviving, or I could live a life that honored his memory." That's the lesson, the one that took 50 years and nearly cost Johnny everything to learn. Your worst moment doesn't define you. The cruelest words ever spoken to you don't have to become your truth. Johnny Cash was 12 years old when his brother died. His father said he should have died instead, and for half a century, Johnny believed him. But he was wrong. The guilt wasn't his to carry. His father's pain and anger had poisoned Johnny's childhood, but it didn't have to poison his whole life. When Johnny finally let go of that guilt, when he finally forgave himself for surviving, something beautiful happened. He started living, really living, not as the wrong son, not as the one who should have died, but as Johnny Cash, flawed, broken, but worthy of being alive. He married June Carter, raised a family, created music that touched millions, became a voice for prisoners, for outcasts, for everyone who'd ever felt like they didn't deserve to be here. Johnny Cash died in 2003, 59 years after his brother Jack. In those 59 years, he created a legacy that changed music, changed culture, changed lives. But more than that, he proved something his father never believed. The wrong son can still live a life worth living. The one who survived can still matter. Guilt doesn't have to be a life sentence. On May 15, 1944, Jack Cash died at 14 years old. He was the good son, the one everyone loved. And Johnny Cash, the one his father said should have died instead, lived on. Not because he was better, not because he deserved it more, but because that's what happened. And what he did with that life, despite the guilt, despite the pain, despite 50 years of believing he shouldn't exist, became proof that even the darkest words don't have to define your story. It should have been you. Those were the cruelest words ever spoken to Johnny Cash. But they didn't kill him, and maybe that's the real miracle.